Hi, friends. Welcome back to Extraordinary Connections. My name is Dillon Burns. I'm the pastor at Manchester United Methodist Church, and glad to be with you on this Tuesday morning, or whenever it is that you're watching this. One of the things I've been working on in online ministry is using more generic descriptors for language, realizing that the time that something premieres online may not be when it is received. And in fact, it makes sense because I'm not even recording this on Tuesday morning. I generally do my devotionals the day before, and so right now it's Monday afternoon. And I'm telling you all of this to lift the veil on these devotionals just a bit in a way that I don't often do, and in part because today is Labor Day as I'm recording this, and so I was taking the day off and realized that I had forgotten to account for the devotionals in my schedule, and so hadn't planned anything for this devotional. And so I said, well, I need to set aside some time to come up with and then record a devotional. And in that moment, not sure of what I should talk about, I had a thought that maybe I could do a devotional about doing a devotional. Very meta, I realize. But what I started to think about was this idea that finding a way to talk about our faith, to share our faith, and explore Scripture in this format is really valuable for all of us as Christian people. That peace about sharing our faith, about carrying it to the ends of the earth that all might know the love of God, happens in so many ways. And one of those, and an important one, is simply finding ways to talk about it, to share it. Devotionals are really just an expression of that. And so, what I'd like to do today, whenever it is, whatever time you're watching this, is spend some time talking about how I go about making a devotional so that you might choose to, excuse me, Bumblebee, so that you can do one of your own if you'd like, or you might use this sort of a process for expressing your faith in any other format. And I'll say that if you've been with us, you may have noticed that we often have other faces sharing devotionals with us in the Extraordinary Connections group. So if this sparks something in you, if you're interested in doing one of those guest spots, reach out to any of us in the Extraordinary Connections group. There's a contact us link on the website, and we'd love to have that conversation with you. So, how is it that you can come up with a devotional? I think the starting point is simply to know that you can. At various points in history, the sort of truth of scriptures have been attempted to be contained by those with a special sense of knowledge or skills or education, and that doesn't seem right, and as history has always proven, isn't an effective way to engage in the Christian faith. Just to say, that the scriptures should be given to all people. All people have the ability to read them, and God speaks to all of us. So, whoever you are, whatever experiences in life you've had, whatever education you do or don't have, whatever skills you think you have and think you don't have, you can explore Scripture, find something that God is speaking to you and to us through it, and share that with all of us. So know that you can do this. And once you have that foundation, then the next thing is to figure out what it is that you're going to talk or write about. There's, generally speaking, two ways of going at this. The first is to come up with the sort of subject or topic, and then going and hunting the scriptures for things about that. The second is sort of the inverse, going to the scriptures first to find something that speaks to you, and then letting that set the subject, the topic. There's value in both. I will say that the pitfall in the first, of coming up with the topic ahead of time, is the inclination to simply find things from Scripture and then force them to say what we might want them to say. I have done this more times than I would like to admit, and it is a type of misinterpretation as opposed to interpretation. Simply going to the Scriptures on our own to see what they have to say for us in that time allows them to speak to us and less of us shaping them. And so explore the scriptures. Find something that speaks to a particular place that we're in, to the particular time that we're in. And when you get there, dig deep. Read it a few times over. Let it sink in and really steep in your mind. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to find something extraordinary or even original in the text. I had a Greek professor once who, in the instructions to a paper we were to write, reminded us that if something hadn't been said before, there was probably a reason for it. That everything worth saying about Scripture may have already been said, except for the heresies and the really poor interpretations. But that doesn't mean it shouldn't be said again, perhaps in a new way, at a new time, to a new group of people. And so it doesn't have to be extraordinarily original. It doesn't have to be something that nobody has ever said before. In fact, it probably should be something that someone has said before. And so in the exploration of that scripture, go and find what those other folks have said about it. And you could just type the scripture passage into Google and see what comes up. That tends to be like standing at a fire hose when it comes to interpretations on scripture, and not all of them may be as good as the others. So I would recommend finding folks you trust, perhaps in person, those you know who have lived life and used the scriptures frequently, so you might hear what they have to say on it, or finding a host of authors and scholars that you trust, perhaps some books, perhaps some blogs, and perhaps, and this is one that's a really convenient and accessible one, perhaps the notes in a study Bible. I use a study Bible for my own personal reading, and there on the bottom of the page, there are notes on each of the different verses. And those tend to be incredibly valuable, provide deep insight, and, well, I trust. And so go and use all of these resources, these different places that talk about the scriptures to help guide the interpretation and understanding. And once you have a good sense of what that scripture might be saying to you and to us in this time and place, well, figure out how to say it again. Does it conjure up a story that's worth telling? A poem worth revisiting? Is there a joke you want to make about it? How is it you want to share this truth again? And this is where personality and individual expression come into play. There are a lot of different ways to say the same thing. And so there are ways that I tackle that. And if you look back in the devotionals I've done, you can see that I enjoy incorporating stories. I like poetry. If you look at the other folks doing devotionals and extraordinary connections, they have different styles. You might have a different style from all of us. Which brings us all the way back around to where we began, which is to say that you can do this, and that perhaps you should. Your perspective on Scripture and the way that you have to share what has long been said is important for us, so that we may share the good news in all of the different languages and forms and expressions that we can, in all of the myriad and diverse ways that God has created us to be. And so whether in a devotional or anything else, trust your ability to do just that, so we might all join together in proclaiming the good news that we know. Friends, whatever day it is, whatever time it is, have a wonderful day. Go in peace.